Hello soul family, welcome back to the channel. This is the Kundalini Yogini, aka Prasiddha. Great to be back with you guys. I am going to be posting a really cool series of videos within the next months. And we're gonna start off with a subject that I think is one of the most intriguing and complex topics, which is the demonization of Kundalini Shakti, the demonization of the symbol of the serpent. Why and how this propaganda actually took place, and the true history and origins of the serpent symbol, the power of Kundalini, and what happened to it along the way. Kundalini was absolutely intentionally demonized, and here's the truth as to why this happened. Kundalini Shakti is the very symbol of our own inner divinity, our own direct connection to our spiritual power and connection to Source and the Goddess. And this was intentionally demonized. The very force that the entire yogic science is meant to awaken and arise in us, and many lineages of Tantra are also aimed at working with this force to help gain self-realization, liberation, and union with the divine. It was deliberately repackaged as the symbol of the devil, and we need to talk about why. For context, I have been studying the lineage of Sanatana Dharma, specifically Shaivism, Tantra, and Ayurvedic medicine for over a decade now. And what I'm about to talk to you about is not a conspiracy theory. It is not a personal theory. It is real evidential data, and it is intentionally being misspread and suppressed, and we need to talk about it. First and foremost, we need to establish what Kundalini actually is. Now, I've made many videos about this subject over the years, and you're welcome to check out the playlist here on my channel on Kundalini. But there's a few points we need to create a foundation with before we get into what the heck happened to this and why it was demonized. Kundalini is the coiled one. Kundalini Shakti, a power, a living energy, an expression of the divine feminine, the goddess herself within us, is described to be seated at the base of our spine in Muladhara chakra. In the root chakra, Kundalini is coiled, and the aim of many spiritual practices in Eastern lineages is to open and awaken this force and allow it to move up, pierce through the chakras, move up the spine, and reach our higher chakras, our third eye, our crown, to experience true enlightenment, true realization of self and oneness with all that is. Kundalini is Shakti herself. It is not just an individual experience or a unique force inside of the human body. It is the goddess herself residing inside of us. The power of creation itself, the power of the cosmos and the energy that breathes life into all things. This is Kundalini Shakti, contained inside of our human vessel. It is an unbelievable, untapped power and potency that each one of us has access to. Kundalini Shakti has been spoken about in the Tantras, in the Agamas, in the Upanishads, across the Vedas for arguably upwards of 10,000 years. This is a documented science of energy and consciousness that has been detailed by the sages, the rishis, the gurus, the initiates of Sanatana Dharma. The Shvetashvara Upanishad describes Kundalini as an inner fire, upward moving energy that rises through our central channel, Sushumna Nadi, and unites the individual with the eternal. The Shiva Samhita says that when Kundalini awakens, all of the chakras are pierced and the mind becomes steady. And a great sage, Vashishta, said that Kundalini is the highest source of knowledge a human being can possess. Now, part 2, let's talk about the symbol of the serpent in the ancient world. Before the serpent was demonized, what did it actually mean across cultures worldwide? Pre-Christianity, the serpent was a symbol that had great spiritual significance across almost every ancient civilization worldwide. In Egypt, we had Wadjet, the cobra goddess, the protector of the pharaoh. And the symbol of the risen serpent on the crown, or the crown of the head, meant this ascension into spiritual knowledge and power. In Sumer and ancient Mesopotamia, the serpent was a symbol of healing, of medicine, of immortality. There was even a deity dated to be at least 2000 BC years old. That was the caduceus. The two intertwined snakes were the symbol of this deity. And on that very note, the symbol of the caduceus, what we most commonly know as the modern day medical symbol, the staff with two serpents coiled around it, is quite literally from Sanatana Dharma and from many of these ancient indigenous civilizations. The staff is the spine, and the two snakes are the Ida and Pingala nadis, the central channels that rise up the spine, and what Kundalini moves through itself to heal and reach enlightenment. The snakes cross each other exactly 7 times, correlating to the 7 chakras, and this is still our modern symbol of healing in anatomy and physiology. In ancient Greece, Athena was always paired with the serpent, a symbol of knowledge, and one of the deities of healing also carried a staff with serpents protruding out of it as a symbol of healing. And Asclepius, the god of medicine, always carried a serpent-entwined staff. Even in pre-Christian Europe, in Ireland, in Scotland, in Britain, the serpent was used as a symbol of spiritual power and greatly revered. Keep in mind, in these countries, snakes do not exist. They never naturally occurred there or lived there. And yet, they still had them as sacred symbols, clearly pointing to not only cultural influences from other areas of the world, but also the spiritual significance of the serpent connected to Kundalini energy. And of course, in ancient India and all of the places that used to be connected to Bharat, the ancient civilization like Vietnam, Cambodia, Sri Lanka, not only depict the snake as directly Kundalini, but also were greatly utilizing this symbol all over temples, in rituals, and a whole entire race of beings called the Nagas, snake beings, were considered very spiritually enlightened and directly connected to bringing the lineage of yoga to planet Earth. Many people don't know this, but one of the fathers of yoga, the organizers of yoga, sage Patanjali, who wrote the Yoga Sutras, was considered to be a Naga, half man, half serpent. So now this finally brings us to the inversion. When, why, and how was the symbol of the serpent and Kundalini completely flipped and demonized? Let's begin with the Garden of Eden story. Now, in the original telling of the Adam and Eve and Garden of Eden story, the serpent was not a symbol of the devil or of Satan, but a symbol of gnosis, inner knowing, inner realization of self. This was later completely reframed, which we're going to talk about next, but Eve was offered the initiation from the serpent to have an inner direct knowing of her own divinity. The knowledge of good and evil, the knowledge of life itself, was given to her by the serpent as a choice. Then something extremely critical happened in 325 CE, the Council of Nicaea. Ooh, guys, so much happened here. I kind of have a hyperfixation on some of the history of the church, especially this part, because Emperor Constantine, in this council, some of the greatest changes to church doctrine happened as a direct result of the desire to eliminate all other spiritual traditions and religious competition to the spread of Christianity and to the Christian colonization of the world. And at this time, a lot of pre-existing Christian beliefs were absolutely transformed and completely taken away from their original source. One of which was the idea of reincarnation. Yes, this was actually a part of Christianity too. It was a part of every religion and spiritual path on earth until modern man decided this is a threat to our control over people, that we can weaponize the concept of heaven and hell. And this was a man-made idea, never originally in the Bible, never originally part of church doctrine. Alongside this, right, a huge part of the story was that this whole concept of original sin, the threat and fear-mongering tactics of the devil and the fear around the devil and polluting our consciousness or becoming a sinner, all of this was a vital construction at this time, right? And so the serpent then became the embodiment of the devil, of Lucifer himself, coming to be the bad, contrary to the holiness of God, right? But this was a constructed tale. Again, it was not part of the original creation story. And this is something that I think a lot of people need to understand. The church, as a political, institutional organization, it requires an intermediary and the belief in an intermediary force between God and man. So the existence, the entire premise of Kundalini itself is one of the greatest threats the church could ever have, because guess what people have absolutely no need for and would never buy, never swallow that pill if they had an understanding of. And that is, right, when I have an experience of my own divinity, when I have a direct connection with source, with God, with goddess, with self, the concept of needing someone else to absolve my sins, needing to pay money to the church to go to heaven, this happened for many decades in the church. The concept of being inherently corrupt and disconnected from source is tossed on its head, right? Is completely destroyed through the inner gnosis, the inner knowing, the inner experience of Kundalini. So yes, a huge information campaign, propaganda campaign has happened for many hundreds of years in the church to create correlation in our mind in such powerful ways and subtle ways between the symbology of the serpent connected to the devil, which is exactly the opposite of what it really is. And by the 7th century CE, the healing symbol of the serpent and the staff had successfully been transformed to a symbol of Satan, a symbol of the devil. And after it was successfully transformed and inverted in Rome, it began to spread throughout the rest of Europe, and of course, as we know later on, through the rest of the world. And just to give you a few other examples of how the church inverted or twisted other spiritual traditions, right? Other pagan traditions to become demonized so that people only felt their option was to prescribe to the church's doctrine, is the Greek god Pan. Pan has always been the symbol of nature in Greek tradition, connection to the wild, to animals, to plant life. And he was quite literally taken, the iconography of Pan was taken to be the exact depiction of the devil, that horned kind of goat-like creature that we correlate to the devil and to demons, was taken exactly from the storyline of Pan and very successfully converted into a symbol of evil. And last but certainly not least is the example of Lilith. Lilith is mentioned in some of the oldest Hebrew texts as Adam's first wife. She was recast as the dark feminine. She was demonized, associated to the serpent and associated to sin, the devil, and rejection from God. They completely took the symbol of Lilith, who was very much described as a woman in her power, a goddess, full of self-knowing, full of Kundalini, full of inner realization, and recast as the goddess of the underworld of sorts. Part 4, why the heck this matters so much right now. Why is this such a relevant conversation to have at this moment of human consciousness and human history? Like me, many of you might have grown up in the church, grown up Catholic, might have been taught that the serpent was a symbol of the devil, that your body was inherently sinful, that you needed an intermediary to reach God, to reach peace, that you were inherently sinful, disconnected, and would never be part and parcel of divinity. And like me, you might have wound up stumbling across the beautiful indigenous traditions of the world. And maybe it was Sanatana Dharma, maybe it was Taoism, maybe it was Peruvian shamanism. And you've recognized a tradition. You saw a tradition that actually said you are inherently divine, you are inherently connected, you are not separate, you don't need an intermediary, and actually our entire spiritual path is about you seeking your own answers, you developing a direct personal relationship to yourself and to divinity, and that actually those two things aren't even two separate things at all. This, my friends, was our Kundalini, our inner gnosis, our inner knowing, finding itself again, leading us home, leading us to truth. For us, this is not old history. This is a living reality. A living revolution is happening, especially for women. We have been living in generations of immense shame around our bodies, around our intuition, around our power, around our connection to source. And the goddess herself has been stripped completely out of the conversation, which is a whole nother dialogue I'll talk about in this series later on. This shame was deliberately engineered to keep us out of our power, to keep us out of our sovereignty, and to be easier to control. The rising, the awakening of Kundalini, Shakti rising, the feminine rising, is arguably the most important revolution that is occurring right now. It is the revolution of completing the other half of the puzzle that has been missing for thousands of years, that has been forgotten, that has been intentionally suppressed. It is the awakening of the feminine, not just in female bodies, by the way, in all bodies, because we all have this life energy inside of us. It is the coming home to ourselves, to our bodies, to nature, and to our own direct path to source. When Kundalini rises in us, it rises in the world, my friends. If this really ignites something in you, if you know you are meant to be part of this Shakti rising movement, coming home to yourself, working with your Kundalini energy, and supporting others back home to themselves, comment Kundalini below, because I have a really cool opportunity and I'm looking for the right aligned people to join me in this work. I have been teaching this for over a decade, and I'm really looking for apprentices, for community members, for comrades, for friends, for colleagues in this field who want to study this work from the source with integrity, integrate it successfully into their lives, and help really create this movement in the world. So if you are interested in this, please drop Kundalini below, or just drop a comment that you're interested below, and I will message you here on YouTube. And let me know if you have any really interesting tidbits of knowledge about this topic that you want to share. Of course, please drop them in the comments. I love to open up this dialogue. And let me know where you'd like to see this series go. I have some really cool plans, but of course would love to hear your input, because this is a community endeavor. So thank you guys so much for listening. If you haven't yet, subscribe to my channel, and let's stay connected across all the platforms. Sending you lots of love, lots of power, and may we all really, really feel our own inner gnosis this week.